So the colonial thinking is it's a very interesting topic and a very interesting theory and concept that can really help us understand deeply understand what is happening in the community, in almost all the spheres in the community, or in formerly colonized contexts. So I start by exploring what is this all this decoloniality. So of course the coloniality is doing away with colonialism. D means D is like D comes from doing away, or like there's construction and deconstruction. If you are deconstructing, it means you are like doing away with what has been constructed. So here it's like demystifying. Uh, we wanna not really demystifying, but we wanna re, re reanalyze. We wanna remove this power that has been exerted by colonialism. So I start by saying colonialism dehumanizes the colonized. Colonialism makes the colonized be like sometimes considered as animals. They are not human. Yeah, they have no agency. They're there to, they're worthy exploitation. They're worthy to be exploited. They're worthy to only benefit the colonizer, but they might not be have a right to to benefit themselves. That's how colonialism works, and I think we have several examples of colonialism in Africa. I think Africa only like two countries. I think Ethiopia and Liberia were not colonized, but the rest of Africa was colonized, and I think South Africa was just the other day that it came out. So it came out of colonialism. So this is a real thing. Yeah. So there's need to identify the oppression that is brought by colonialism and to resist it so that we can get sustainable transformation. And importantly, we need so that we can affirm the humanity of the colonized. You could have heard about the story of Batman. Sarah Batman, yes, the lady who was taken from South Africa and taken to Europe, and she was used as in a freak show. So they were viewing her as an ape, like her body features were considered abnormal because the color and the body features, they were considered the small. They said she had small ears and a big behind, which was not the norm in Europe. So they even there was even a term for maybe there was a term for the big behind. They found a medical term that described the big behind as a disease, and the small ears and other features were like this. She's more of an ape than a human being. So she was exploited. She was used, put like in a zoo. People come and do all sorts of mad things to her. Yeah, so that's what we talk about dehumanizing. Yeah, so there's need to resist such oppression so that we can assert the humanity of the colonized people, and there's need to and after we assert, we need to bring sustainable transformation, because such transformation will consider the colonized, will come from the colonized. They will own it, and it will be speaking to their needs, the immediate needs, not the needs of the colonizer. So we will these issues of being exploited by the colonizer will be addressed, because there's a saying, or there's some thinking that no knowledge is free. no knowledge is neutral. All knowledge has a bias. You are told something, or you are given something, so that to benefit the one who gives you the knowledge has some interest in that. So you as the colonized should be able to make your own knowledge, so that you shun being exploited. So, well, we go with the next point there. I'm talking about how colonialism considered Africa as primitive, barbaric, and dangerous, and diseased. That's how Africa was dismissed. You see, Africa was taught as not having history. Yeah. When colonialists came, it was like Africa. They have discovered Africa. That's why we say, like, you will hear some lakes still called some names that are not African. They were renamed, given some European names. Yeah, because of this view that history started with the arrival of the colonialists. So does it mean that the people who are living here before the arrival of colonialists, does it mean they were not human? Does it mean they couldn't think? They couldn't relate with the environment? They didn't have a life. You see? So it's of course we need to appreciate this how colonialism has shaped the world, has kind of made silence the voices of the colonized. I go to the next point. When we turn to specific issues of disability, there is evidence that African communities understood disability differently from the ideas of the West. There are instances where Africa constructed disability differently. Like how we think about disability now is not always how it has been. It has a lot of colonial influences. Yeah. Disabled people, I'm just giving examples of how disability was constructed differently in Africa. Disabled people were accepted and given visible roles in society, such as being considered as gods in the ancient African civilization of Kemet. Kemet, that is Egypt, as well as in Yoruba folklore. Like they were actually, disabled people were raised with that high status of they are gods. They are not a charity case. They actually have a god status. In Botswana, or historical Botswana, being blind or having mobility challenges was not considered to be a disability, but was viewed as normal and was associated with increased spiritual insight and other powers. That's another example. And in Zimbabwe, there are the people called Vadoma, who have a condition that is medically called ectrodactyl, which makes them miss 3 middle toes and the outer ones turn in. And these people, they regard themselves with pride, even forbidding their members from marrying outside the tribe. So we are saying they don't consider it as a disability or a deformity. It's kind of a source of pride. So this is another example where a disability is how Africa considered disability was kind of different. Oh yes, they use other parameters to view disability. Excuse me. So, using these examples, it could mean that disabled people were integrated in daily life activities in Africa to some extent. Yeah. So, even with those examples that I've given, it doesn't mean that pre-colonial Africa was perfect. There were other instances where disability was seen as a problem, and where the reaction wasn't good, or the treatment wasn't good. So an example is the Igbo of Nigeria, where although they were unfamiliar with deformity of shape, they viewed being brown skin, or what I call tawny, or a kind of a whiteness, as deformed, because it was different from what was prevailing, like the black beauty. Everyone was black, and black was considered beautiful. And then all of a sudden, a brown, a very brown or tawny child comes. He was considered, he or she was considered as a deformed. See, that was a kind of disability. How disability was formed. And then there were also in Nigeria, there were cases of twin killings. When you give birth to twins, they are considered an abnormality, and they will actually be killed. And we also have cases, sometimes we have cases of ritual killing in some African countries, especially targeting people with albinism. And also we have disabled children, cases where disabled children were hidden by the family from the public and even killed. So what are we saying here? We are just saying that African indigenous values and practices should not be idealized. They should not be idealized, but they should be pursued critically so as to resist any reproduction of exclusionary and oppressive African narratives towards disabled people. So we are saying there are things to learn from the past. The past had its positives, like pre-colonial Africa had its positives, but it also had its negatives. So we should do a balancing act. We should be critical. Our adoption of these indigenous knowledges, indigenous philosophies should be critical. It shouldn't be just blanket.